A shocking twist takes out the new Gojo, but Yuji and Todo step up in an unbelievable way, and Sukuna gets tricked into making a fatal mistake. This is the beginning of the end. This changes everything, so let's get into it. You guys know how this works. If you enjoy my JJK content and you want to see more in the future, do me a huge favor and leave a like and comment right now for that YouTube algorithm. And if you like my videos but you haven't taken the time to subscribe yet, remember that subscribing on YouTube is completely free and it helps me out a lot. Okay, in the last chapter, the fierce battle between new Gojo and Sukuna escalated even further. Yuta in Gojo's body was convinced that he had the advantage because Sukuna seemed unable to use his world-cutting slash after losing his left hands. This meant that, in theory, Sukuna shouldn't be able to defeat Gojo's limitless technique, at least not in the short term. That said, the technique Limitless is actually much harder to use than it appears at first glance. Because Gojo is such a master at using it, while watching him use it you might think that it's a simple process because he makes it look so easy. However, Yuta admits that he has not mastered it yet. Gojo wasn't just incredibly talented, he actually worked extremely hard for many years to become as strong as he is. And now Yuta is basically forced to speedrun the entire process, and if he doesn't, he will be destroyed by Sukuna during this battle. For his part, Sukuna has figured out that now that Yuta has used Kenjaku's technique to take over Gojo's body, he can't use any other curse techniques besides Limitless. Rika did not follow him into Gojo's body, and the time that Yuta can maintain a copy technique is limited. So what happens after that time runs out and Kenjaku's curse technique effect expires? It seems that Yuta gambled everything on this fight, and on being able to finish it before the effects of copy expire. And if Yuta fails this gamble, then this is the end of him, the end of Gojo, and the end of all the other sorcerers who are desperately trying to stop Sukuna. Meanwhile, Yuta is using Kenjaku's technique to search every last one of Gojo's memories in order to come up with a more effective strategy to fight, and in order to learn to use Limitless more effectively. For his part, Sukuna is determined not to let Yuta in Gojo's body use purple, but Yuta ends up using a pretty genius trick that he was hiding up his sleeve. He uses blue to summon a voice recorder containing cursed speech that was pre-recorded by Inumaki. The effects of this cursed speech are able to stop and distract Sukuna long enough for Yuta to charge up and use Hollow Purple. And on that epic note, the previous chapter ended. The new chapter picks up as the small domain barrier collapses and both Sukuna and Yuta in Gojo's body, aka Gota, are thrown back into the outside world. Sukuna is shocked that Gota was able to destroy his domain barrier, but he recognizes that Yuta is not yet used to using Hollow Purple, so he isn't able to use it in the most effective and efficient way. That said, the fight has now changed drastically yet again, because it's no longer Sukuna versus Gota one-on-one, it is now 3v1 Yuji and Todo and Gota fighting against Sukuna. Todo tells Gota not to worry about hitting him and Yuji with collateral damage, and to just slam Sukuna with another Hollow Purple as soon as the technique recharges. Todo says he'll make sure that he and Yuji get out of the way using his Boogie Woogie technique. Things are looking pretty good for the good guys right now, because after deploying his domain, Sukuna is now once again in a difficult position because his curse technique is low, and so he can't use it as freely as he would like to. But in classic Gege style, just as things are looking bad for Sukuna, the universe itself intervenes to help him yet again. This time we see Gota collapsing to the ground suddenly, and he is practically lifeless. It seems that Gota's time is now up. Kenjaku's copy technique is burned out due to Gota using domain expansion, and it is no longer working. This apparently means that Yuta is now stuck in Gojo's body and unable to move. Since Rika is not possessing this body, he can't use the copy technique again, so he is seemingly stuck in limbo within the body of Gojo. Yuta is trying to figure out whether Kenjaku was able to use his technique even after deploying the domain of the host's body, but he can't recall any such information. Meanwhile, Yuji and Todo don't have any time to waste worrying about Yuta because they have to fight Sukuna. Sukuna attacks Todo with a black flash attack, demonstrating once again that he is still very much able to keep fighting. But thanks to Boogie Woogie, Todo and Yuji are able to avoid the worst of Sukuna's attacks while also landing some big blows on Sukuna using their impressive teamwork. It also seems that little fragments or shards of the barrier which still haven't disappeared are allowing Boogie Woogie to function even more effectively because Todo can just switch himself and Yuji with the shards themselves. I always assume that when a barrier collapses, all its fragments will disappear like instantly, but that doesn't seem to be the case, and Todo is able to use that to his advantage. As Todo works the Boogie Woogie magic, and he's actually activating it by slapping it against his head, since a part of it broke off earlier, which is pretty hilarious, Yuji launches what is essentially a Shadow Clone-esque attack on Sukuna, and he is able to evade Sukuna's defenses and land a massive dismantle attack right into Sukuna. But this isn't just a regular physical attack. Yuji is aiming his dismantle attacks right at the barrier between Sukuna and Megumi's souls in an attempt to force Megumi to awaken and separate from Sukuna. Using a binding vow that narrows the target of the technique, Yuji is able to use this technique to accurately tear apart souls more effectively than a physical blow could. Sukuna knows that this is bad. He admits that if he keeps taking these hits, he will lose this fight because he cannot maintain his physical form. In fact, he seems to be taking so much damage that he spits out one of his cursed fingers, and he is forced to then pick it back up and stuff it inside his mouth and swallow it again. Okay, first of all, that is gross. But second of all, I think this is one of the single biggest clues that we've had so far that Sukuna really is getting worn out by this fight. He really is suffering real damage, he really is beginning to fall apart, and that is a big deal. That is a major development for the progression of the story. So far, it seems that every time Sukuna is at a disadvantage in the fight, he manages to turn the tables and defeat the enemy. However, this chapter clearly suggests that all the damage Sukuna has suffered is sticking. It is having a lasting effect on his body, and he may actually be close to falling apart and losing once and for all. Sukuna concludes that Yuji used a binding vow to allow him to strike directly at the barrier between his and Megumi's souls, which makes it much easier for him to tear Sukuna's soul away from Megumi's body. Yuji then continues to use Dismantle against Sukuna, this time to cut down the stone structure on top of which Sukuna was standing, and then attack the King of Curses on his way down. He successfully avoids Yuji's attack and then counter-strikes Yuji and straight up blasts him into a nearby wall. Sukuna smiles as he realizes that as long as he can dodge and avoid those soul-tearing attacks from Yuji, there is nothing that the heroes will be able to do to hurt him, and so he will win in the end. Todo then rejoins the fight and attempts to use his Vibra Slap to make a swap, but at first it seems like no swap has happened because no one seems to move. For a brief moment, Sukuna seems to think that Todo's technique has stopped working, but then suddenly he realizes that Hana, Kurusu, and Angel have appeared right above him. Todo's Vibra Slap now breaks, but it looks like he had made a binding vow that allowed him to extend the range of his technique, presumably at the cost of the Vibra Slap itself. The chapter ends with a recap of how this moment was planned in advance by Yuta and Angel, and then the final page shows Angel using a maximum output Jacob's Ladder to directly attack Sukuna. The goal is to use the attack to split Sukuna and Megumi's souls apart, which would presumably end the fight for Sukuna. So, is this it? Is this finally the end of Sukuna after all of that buildup? Has Gege finally teased us enough? Well, if we're being realistic, this arc has been implied to be the final arc of the manga, so this Sukuna fight is likely the final major fight in the entire series. This means that we have to be pretty close to the end, and if we assume that JJK will go the classic shonen route of the good guys winning and the bad guys losing, then Sukuna has to lose sometime fairly soon. The only question is whether this is the beginning of the end, or whether Gege will still bait us a few more times along the way. Now, do I think that Jacob's Ladder alone will defeat Sukuna? No, absolutely not. But I do think that this will weaken him even more, and it will make him even more vulnerable to Yuji's soul-tearing attacks. So, theoretically, we could now see an epic final 1v1 between Sukuna and Yuji, in which Sukuna finally meets his match, Yuji separates Megumi's soul from Sukuna, and Sukuna is defeated while Megumi is saved. And everyone lives happily ever after. Well, except all the important characters that already died. You know, say what you will about Gege, but the man is not afraid to kill off fan-favorite characters. But I do still feel like Uraume will try some sort of desperate move to help Sukuna before the fight ends, so we probably have at the very least one more Uraume related twist coming before the fight actually ends. But of course, we could still have other twists too, like for example Rika coming to help Yuta, either by possessing Gojo's body or by possessing Yuta's currently empty body and arriving on the battlefield inside that body. What will ultimately happen to Yuta now that he is kind of stuck in Gojo's body is still a major unresolved question. And even though we're all hoping that Yuta will find a way to survive, knowing Gege, Yuta could definitely die by the time the battle ends. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me. What do you guys think? Is this fight and the entire JJK series about to end very soon? Given that MHA is ending in only a few chapters, it would be pretty crazy to also lose JJK so close to the end of MHA, but it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. Is Sukuna finally going to lose? And if so, how exactly is it going to happen? I've seen that a lot of people have complained about how long this fight has lasted and how many times Gege made it look like Sukuna would lose, only to have him turn the tables on everyone again. But I think that if Gege can pull off an epic ending to the final fight, something memorable that will leave everyone in awe, then I think that most people will get over their complaints that the fight took too long. Especially when this fight is covered in the anime, I think the high quality animation will make everything feel a lot smoother and better paced. Don't forget to leave your thoughts down in the comments below. I really want to know what you guys think about this huge game-changing chapter and when JJK will actually end, how Sukuna will be defeated, and how soon. If you're looking for more epic JJK content to watch right now, check out my full JJK playlist, link on screen and in the description. If you enjoyed this video, you can leave a like to let me know, it helps me out a lot. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications. Subscribing on YouTube is completely free, but it means a lot.